The crisp autumn morning in Chicago's Central Plaza starts like any other, except for the growing crowd gathering with handmade signs and determined expressions. The plaza, usually filled with hurried commuters, transforms into a sea of protesters. Hundreds of citizens, diverse in age and background, stand shoulder to shoulder, their signs bearing messages of unity and change. The atmosphere, though charged with emotion, remains peaceful. Mayor Malik Johnson arrives without fanfare, wearing a simple dark suit. He moves through the crowd, shaking hands and listening to concerned citizens. The gesture isn't lost on the protesters, seeing their mayor among them adds legitimacy to their cause. When Malik takes the makeshift podium, a hush falls over the crowd. Several blocks away, Officer Jack Thompson sits in his patrol car, his coffee growing cold as he watches the gathering crowd through narrowed eyes. His police radio crackles with updates about the protest's size. In the passenger seat, his partner reads out social media posts about the gathering, while Jack's knuckles whiten on the steering wheel. The protesters' chants begin softly at first, just a few voices calling for justice. But like waves building strength, more voices join until the plaza echoes with their unified demands. Jack observes this through his rearview mirror, muttering to his colleagues about the city's declining state. His 20 years on the force have left him cynical, viewing every protest as a potential riot waiting to happen. When the crowd starts chanting "justice" and "down with oppression," Jack's team springs into action. They don their riot gear with practiced efficiency, the sound of Velcro and clicking equipment filling the patrol car. Jack adjusts his vest, checking his radio and gear one final time. The temperature in the plaza seems to rise as protesters and police eye each other warily across an invisible line. Squad cars begin positioning themselves strategically around the plaza's perimeter. Jack's team takes up formation, their presence drawing concerned glances from the protesters. The contrast between the peaceful demonstrators and the heavily equipped police force creates a visual tension that everyone can feel. Some protesters begin filming with their phones, while others hold their signs higher, their chants growing louder in response to the police presence. The tension escalates as Jack Thompson and his riot squad push through the crowd, their boots heavy on the concrete. The sea of protesters parts reluctantly, some holding their ground until the last moment. Jack's eyes scan the crowd through his helmet visor, his hand resting on his baton more out of habit than necessity. The morning sun glints off their riot shields, creating an intimidating wall of uniformed officers advancing toward the center of the plaza. Mayor Malik Johnson notices the police approach and immediately recognizes the potential for conflict. He steps down from the podium, his security detail moving with him as he walks deliberately toward the approaching officers. Malik raises his hands in a peaceful gesture, his voice carrying across the plaza as he attempts to defuse the situation. "Officers, this is a peaceful assembly. These people are exercising their constitutional rights." Jack's jaw tightens at the sight of the mayor. From his perspective, Malik's presence is only encouraging the protesters, making their job harder. The crowd's energy shifts as they watch their mayor confront the police line. Some protesters begin recording with their phones, while others move closer to witness the exchange. The air grows thick with tension. "Mr. Mayor," Jack's voice comes out sharp and authoritative, "you need to clear the area. This gathering is becoming a public safety concern." His words carry the weight of years spent handling similar situations, but there's an edge to his tone that suggests personal frustration. Malik stands his ground, straightening his tie as he responds. "Officer Thompson, I have every right to be here with my constituents. These people are not causing any disturbance. We can work together to maintain peace." The mayor's calm demeanor contrasts sharply with Jack's aggressive stance. The confrontation reaches its breaking point when Jack takes a step forward, closing the distance between himself and the mayor. "This is your final warning," he growls, the words barely audible over the crowd's increasing volume. Malik remains unmoved, his hands still raised in a peaceful gesture. Several things happen in quick succession. A protester shouts something indistinct, causing Jack to flinch. His training kicks in automatically, but his response is disproportionate to the threat. With a sudden burst of movement, he shoves Malik hard, sending the mayor stumbling backward. Malik's feet tangle beneath him, and he falls hard onto the concrete. The plaza erupts in chaos. The sound of shocked gasps and angry shouts fills the air as phones capture the moment from every angle. Malik's security detail rushes forward, but the damage is already done. The image of the city's mayor sprawled on the ground, his suit dusty and his dignity wounded, burns itself into the memories of everyone present. The moment stretches like a rubber band pulled too tight, threatening to snap at any second. Jack stands over Malik, his posture rigid, as the reality of what he's just done begins to sink in. The crowd's reaction transforms from shock to outrage, their voices rising in a unified cry of protest that echoes off the surrounding buildings. Hours after the incident, every major news network plays the footage on a continuous loop. Malik Johnson sits in a brightly lit studio, his composed demeanor masking the turmoil beneath. The bruise on his elbow, hidden by his suit jacket, serves as a physical reminder of the morning's events. The interviewer leans forward, microphone poised, as Malik addresses the nation. "What happened today isn't just about me," Malik says, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "This is about every citizen who has ever felt powerless in the face of authority. Today, I experienced firsthand what too many of our community members face regularly." The camera captures every micro-expression as he continues, sharing statistics about similar incidents that have gone unreported or unaddressed. Meanwhile, across town, Jack Thompson sits in his darkened living room, the TV's blue light illuminating his face as he watches the mayor's interview. Empty beer bottles line the coffee table, testament to hours spent processing the day's events. His wife Sarah stands in the doorway, arms crossed, her silence more damning than any words she could speak. "How could you be so reckless?" Sarah finally breaks the silence, her voice tight with disappointment. "That man is our mayor, Jack. He was trying to keep the peace." Jack's shoulders tense, but he doesn't turn around. The news switches to showing the incident from another angle, and he watches himself push Malik to the ground for the 100th time. 20 years on the force, Sarah continues, moving into the room. 20 years of building respect in this community, and you throw it away in 5 seconds. Jack's hand tightens around his beer bottle, knuckles white. The weight of his actions presses down on him like a physical force. Across the city, in a well-appointed study, Malik sits with his 15-year-old son Marcus. The teenager's homework lies forgotten on the desk as they engage in a conversation that no parent wants to have. "Dad, are we safe here?" Marcus asks, his young face serious beyond his years. "If they can do that to the mayor." Malik struggles to find the right words, wanting to protect his son while being honest about their reality. "This is our home, Marcus. We can't let fear drive us away. But we need to be aware, to be careful." He pauses, watching his son process this information. "What happened today, it's not right, but it's an opportunity for change." The conversation is interrupted by Malik's phone buzzing continuously with messages from concerned citizens, community leaders, and reporters seeking comments. Each notification represents another voice demanding answers, seeking justice, or expressing outrage. Malik glances at his son, seeing the worry in his eyes, and makes a silent promise to turn this incident into meaningful change. As night falls over Chicago, 3 different households grapple with the day's events. Jack Thompson staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, questioning every decision that led to this moment, Malik Johnson holding his son close, trying to balance hope with reality, and countless citizens watching their screens, wondering what tomorrow will bring to their divided city. The days following the incident transformed Chicago's streets into a canvas of collective outrage and demand for change. Community centers overflow with concerned citizens, their voices rising above the usual city noise. Local businesses closed their doors in solidarity, displaying handmade signs supporting reform. The movement grows beyond the initial protest, taking on a life of its own. In a crowded community hall, Maya Rodriguez emerges as an unexpected catalyst for change. A former civil rights attorney turned community organizer, she commands attention not through volume but through calculated precision. Mayor Johnson's incident isn't just a headline, she declares to the packed room. It's evidence of a systemic problem that demands more than just words. Her eyes lock onto Malik, who sits in the front row, challenging him directly. Maya's approach differs from typical activists. She comes armed with data, statistics, and specific policy proposals. "We need concrete action," she states, spreading documents across a table. Body cameras on every officer. Independent oversight committees. Regular de-escalation training. Real consequences for violations. The crowd murmurs in agreement, phones recording every word. Malik finds himself in an increasingly difficult position. His office receives thousands of emails and calls daily, split between demands for immediate police reform and concerns about maintaining law and order. Every decision seems to alienate one group or another. During a tense city council meeting, he realizes that straddling the middle ground is no longer an option. The pressure intensifies when Maya organizes a series of strategic demonstrations. Unlike the previous protest, these are meticulously planned, targeting specific locations, police precincts, city hall, and major intersections. Each protest carries a specific demand, backed by research and legal precedent. The media coverage is constant, forcing both the police department and city administration to respond. During one particularly heated town hall meeting, Maya confronts Malik directly. "Mr. Mayor, we elected you to lead, not to compromise," she declares, her voice carrying across the packed auditorium. "You've experienced police brutality firsthand. Will you use your position to create real change, or will you continue playing it safe?" The question hangs in the air, cameras flashing as Malik considers his response. The community's organization becomes more sophisticated. Social media campaigns spread awareness, while legal teams offer pro bono services to protesters. Local businesses create safe spaces for community meetings, and technology companies donate equipment for documenting police interactions. The movement transforms from a reaction to a structured campaign for reform. Malik spends sleepless nights in his office, reviewing proposal after proposal. His political advisors warn him about the risks of taking too strong a stance, while his conscience, weighted by personal experience, pushes him toward more dramatic action. The choice becomes clear: maintain political safety or embrace the role of a reformer. Inside the police department's locker room, Jack Thompson stares at his reflection, his uniform feeling heavier than usual. The bruise on his knuckles has faded, but the weight of his actions remains. Around him, fellow officers discuss the ongoing protests with a mixture of frustration and defensiveness, but their words sound hollow to him now. During his patrol shifts, Jack observes the city through new eyes. He watches as officers interact with citizens, noticing behaviors he previously ignored or justified. A young rookie unnecessarily aggressive during a routine traffic stop. A veteran officer using excessive force while breaking up a minor dispute. Small incidents that add up to a pattern he can no longer deny. At the precinct, conversations shift when he enters the room. Some officers treat him like a pariah for bringing negative attention to the department, while others defend his actions too enthusiastically, revealing prejudices he hadn't noticed before. During a coffee break, his longtime friend and fellow officer, Mike Martinez, pulls him aside into an empty briefing room. "You need to hear this, Jack," Mike says, checking to ensure they're alone. "Remember that drug bust last month? The one that looked too clean?" He proceeds to reveal details about evidence tampering, racial profiling, and systematic cover-ups within their precinct. Jack listens, his coffee growing cold, as Mike outlines years of misconduct they'd both witnessed but never questioned. The revelations force Jack to confront his own history. Every arrest, every confrontation, every split-second decision comes under his own scrutiny. He reviews his body camera footage from previous incidents, seeing patterns in his behavior that mirror the very issues protesters are fighting against. The realization hits him like a physical blow. During a mandatory sensitivity training session, Jack observes his colleagues' dismissive attitudes and remembers sharing their perspective just weeks ago. The instructor discusses implicit bias while officers check their phones or exchange knowing glances. But Jack takes notes, his pen pressing hard against the paper as he documents points that now seem glaringly obvious. At home, he starts researching. News articles about police misconduct across the country. Academic studies on systemic racism in law enforcement. Personal accounts from victims of police brutality. His browser history becomes a testament to his growing awareness, each new piece of information challenging his long-held beliefs. The final push comes when he witnesses a senior officer planting evidence during an arrest. The same officer who had praised Jack's handling of the mayor's incident. Standing in the parking lot afterward, Jack makes a decision that will change everything. He pulls out his phone and dials the Internal Affairs hotline, his hand steady despite knowing the consequences that will follow. The Internal Affairs investigation begins quietly but quickly gains momentum. Jack sits in a sterile interrogation room, this time on the other side of the table. For 6 hours, he meticulously details everything he's witnessed, the evidence tampering, the excessive force incidents, the unwritten rules of cover-ups. His testimony fills dozens of pages, each word carefully recorded by stern-faced investigators. Meanwhile, Malik works from a different angle. In his office, surrounded by community leaders and Maya, they draft a comprehensive reform proposal. The document addresses everything from training protocols to accountability measures. Maya's experience as a civil rights attorney proves invaluable as they navigate legal frameworks and policy requirements. The investigation sends shockwaves through the department. Officers scramble to secure their positions, some turning on their colleagues to save themselves. Internal Affairs investigators sweep through the precinct, collecting evidence, interviewing officers, and reviewing years of body camera footage. The thin blue line begins to crack under pressure. During a closed-door session with the police commissioner, Malik presents evidence of systematic misconduct. The commissioner, a veteran of 30 years, sits stone-faced as he reviews documentation of dozens of incidents. This goes deeper than we thought, he admits finally, his authority visibly shaken. Outside, tensions escalate. A group of officers, feeling threatened by the investigation, organize their own protest. They park their patrol cars around City Hall, lights flashing, demanding an end to what they call a witch hunt. The sight of uniformed officers protesting against their own department creates a surreal atmosphere in downtown Chicago. The situation reaches a breaking point when protesters and off-duty officers clash near police headquarters. What starts as verbal confrontation quickly escalates. Maya, attempting to maintain order among her supporters, finds herself in the middle of a growing riot. The very scenario everyone feared begins to unfold. Jack, watching the chaos unfold from inside the building, makes a crucial decision. Against direct orders, he steps outside to address both sides. His presence creates a momentary pause in the violence. As both an insider and now a whistleblower, his unique position commands attention from all parties. The day ends with dozens of arrests, but not along the expected lines. Several officers are led away in handcuffs, charged with inciting violence and abuse of power. The image of police arresting their own colleagues captures national headlines, symbolizing the depth of the department's internal conflict. In a bold move that surprises the city, Jack and Malik schedule a joint press conference. The City Hall press room buzzes with anticipation as cameras focus on the unlikely pair. Former adversaries now stand together, their shared purpose evident in their determined expressions. The room falls silent as they approach the podium. Malik speaks first, his words carefully chosen. "Today marks a turning point for Chicago. Officer Thompson and I stand before you not as opponents, but as partners in reform." Jack, still in his uniform but without his badge, steps forward. His testimony about departmental corruption carries extra weight coming directly after the mayor's introduction. Behind the scenes, their alliance grows stronger through shared experiences. During a private meeting in Malik's office, they exchange stories that reveal the human cost of their previous positions. Jack describes his early days as an idealistic rookie, while Malik shares his struggles as a black man rising through political ranks. These conversations build a foundation of understanding that transcends their initial conflict. However, not everyone supports their collaboration. Anonymous threats begin arriving at both their offices. Malik's car is vandalized with racial slurs, while Jack finds "traitor" spray-painted across his garage door. Their families feel the pressure. Malik's son faces harassment at school, and Jack's wife receives threatening phone calls at work. The threats escalate when a brick crashes through Malik's office window during a late-night strategy session. Inside is a note warning him to "stay in his lane." Security footage reveals nothing, but the message is clear: powerful forces want to maintain the status quo. Jack recognizes the tactical approach as something only someone with police training would know. Despite the intimidation, their partnership strengthens. They begin conducting joint community outreach sessions, where Jack's inside knowledge of police procedures combines with Malik's understanding of community needs. These sessions, though initially tense, become forums for genuine dialogue between law enforcement and citizens. Maya, initially skeptical of Jack's involvement, begins to see the value of having an insider's perspective. During one particularly productive meeting, she works with Jack to identify specific training procedures that need reform. Their collaborative approach creates a model for others to follow. The media captures this evolving relationship, though not always accurately. Some outlets praise their cooperation as a model for national reform, while others question their motives and authenticity. Through it all, they maintain their focus on concrete changes rather than public perception. The city council chambers host the most significant gathering in recent Chicago history. Police officers in full uniform sit beside community activists, their usual divisions temporarily set aside. Jack and Malik take their positions at the front of the room, facing both their supporters and critics. The tension in the air is palpable as the meeting begins. Behind closed doors, weeks of preparation have led to this moment. The proposed reforms are comprehensive: new training protocols, civilian oversight committees, transparent disciplinary procedures, and mandatory community engagement programs. Each point represents hours of negotiation between police representatives and community leaders. However, not everyone supports the changes. A group of senior officers, led by Lieutenant Richard Hayes, arrives with their own agenda. Hayes, a 25-year veteran known for his hardline approach, interrupts the proceedings with rehearsed objections. These reforms will handcuff our officers, he declares, his voice carrying authority gained from years of command. The meeting's turning point comes when Jack steps forward to address his former colleagues. His voice, steady but emotional, cuts through the tension. "I've stood where you're standing. I've made the same arguments. But we can't deny what's happening in our department anymore." He proceeds to share specific instances of misconduct he's witnessed, naming names and providing dates. Several officers shift uncomfortably in their seats as Jack speaks. Some avoid eye contact, while others whisper among themselves. The room grows increasingly tense as he details incidents that many present had witnessed but ignored. Maya watches from her seat, documenting reactions and identifying potential allies among the officers. Lieutenant Hayes attempts to discredit Jack, questioning his loyalty and suggesting personal motives for his actions. But Jack's response changes the dynamic. He pulls out his phone and plays an audio recording of Hayes instructing officers to falsify reports. The revelation sends shockwaves through the room. Malik seizes this moment to bridge the divide. He acknowledges the challenges officers face while emphasizing the need for accountability. His words reach both sides. This isn't about choosing between supporting police and protecting citizens. It's about creating a system that serves everyone fairly. As the meeting concludes, clear battle lines have been drawn. Most officers, seeing the evidence presented, cautiously support the reforms. A smaller group, led by Hayes, remains staunchly opposed. The real work of implementation lies ahead, but for the first time, there's a sense that change is possible. The following weeks bring escalating tensions to Chicago's streets. News of the proposed reforms sparks both celebration and resistance. Community organizers under Maya's leadership stage daily demonstrations supporting the changes, while a vocal minority of police officers engage in a work slowdown, deliberately delaying response times to emergency calls. Jack and Malik's joint march becomes the focal point of this conflict. They lead thousands through downtown Chicago, police officers walking alongside community members in an unprecedented display of unity. The image is powerful: the mayor and the whistleblower officer, once adversaries, now walking shoulder to shoulder. However, beneath the surface of this peaceful demonstration, trouble brews. A group of officers, loyal to Hayes, position themselves along the march route. They're out of uniform but easily identifiable by their military-style haircuts and hostile stances. As the march progresses, they begin shouting provocations at their former colleagues. The situation deteriorates when Officer Steve Wilson, Jack's former partner, breaks through the crowd. His face contorted with rage, he charges toward Jack. "You betrayed us all," he shouts, swinging wildly. The crowd recoils as Jack defends himself, their brief struggle captured by dozens of phones and news cameras. In the chaos that follows, Wilson drops a paper that reveals something crucial: documented evidence of a coordinated effort to undermine the reforms. The paper trail leads directly to Hayes and several high-ranking department officials. Names, dates, and amounts of money paint a picture of widespread corruption. The violence spreads as Hayes' supporters clash with reform advocates. Maya organizes her people to form a human chain, protecting peaceful protesters from the agitators. The police present at the march find themselves making a choice: support their corrupt colleagues or stand with the reformers. Jack, still recovering from Wilson's attack, uses his radio to coordinate with reform-supporting officers. They move systematically to contain the violence, demonstrating the very type of measured response the new policies advocate. Their actions stand in stark contrast to the aggressive tactics of Hayes' supporters. The media captures every moment of the confrontation. Live broadcasts show police officers arresting their own colleagues, Hayes' supporters being led away in handcuffs, and reform-minded officers protecting protesters. The imagery is powerful, the old guard literally being removed by the new. The internal affairs investigation concludes with devastating revelations. Lieutenant Hayes and 12 other high-ranking officers face criminal charges for corruption, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. The investigation, sparked by Jack's initial testimony, uncovers decades of systematic abuse. Bank records reveal kickbacks, falsified overtime, and funds diverted from community programs. The police chief's resignation comes next, delivered during a press conference where he admits to looking the other way. His departure marks the end of an era, creating an opportunity for genuine reform. Malik, seizing the moment, announces a complete restructuring of the department's leadership, with Jack nominated for a key position in the new administration. The city council meeting where these changes become official draws record attendance. Community members fill every seat, spilling into the hallways. When the vote for reform passes unanimously, the chambers erupt in celebration. Maya stands at the back, tears in her eyes, watching as years of activism finally bear fruit. Malik's re-election campaign becomes a referendum on the reforms. Running on a platform of continued change and accountability, he faces fierce opposition from those wanting to return to traditional policing. The election night results send a clear message: Chicago's citizens choose progress, re-electing him with a historic margin. Jack's promotion to Deputy Commissioner of Community Relations comes with both authority and responsibility. His first act is to implement mandatory partnership programs between officers and community organizations. The sight of police officers working alongside neighborhood leaders becomes common throughout Chicago. The transformative effects become visible within months. Complaint rates against officers drop significantly. Community trust, measured through independent surveys, shows steady improvement. Crime rates decrease as citizens begin viewing police as partners rather than adversaries. Other cities send representatives to study Chicago's model of reform. The story culminates in a community celebration at the same plaza where it all began. Malik and Jack stand together on the stage, no longer divided by uniform or position. The crowd includes officers in new uniforms designed with community input, activists who fought for change, and citizens who never lost hope. In his closing speech, Malik addresses the gathered crowd. 1 year ago, on this very spot, an act of violence revealed deep wounds in our city. Today, those wounds are healing. Not because we forgot, but because we chose to learn, to change, and to grow together. Jack's final act of the day captures the transformation perfectly. He removes his new badge and invites a group of neighborhood kids to examine it. As they pass it around, asking questions and sharing dreams of becoming officers themselves, the badge becomes more than a symbol of authority, it becomes a bridge between communities once divided. The story ends not with a simple happy ending, but with the promise of continued progress. Chicago's transformation becomes a blueprint for other cities, proving that change is possible when courage meets opportunity, and when former adversaries choose to become allies in the pursuit of justice.